This is the Post Shift Podcast, a raw look at the hospitality industry. Okay, Post Shifters, this is my interview with Donnie Ronen. I had a really good time in San Antonio with him. It does get loud, as I say in the very beginning, and I tried to get some of the background noise out as much as possible. We do get interrupted by Rocky Year, of course, because that's going to happen, but I hope you really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun. When it comes to post-production, being a one-man show, I'm working my best to get it as good as possible, but it's a work in progress, and I am teaching myself as I go. So the sound quality is going to get better and better, and I appreciate your support regardless. Thank you. Enjoy the episode. Okay, Post Shifters, this is going to be a weird episode because you're going to hear a lot of background noise because we're sitting in the original Blanco Cafe in San Antonio, and I'm with Donnie Ronen, and you're going to hear a lot of fun background noise. It was really quiet in here when we got in, and I feel like it's going to fill up over the next half an hour, like really quickly.
Well, no one else we know gets up at this hour.
This is true. So we're not going to. That's what I was worried about. That was going to be like having breakfast, like, Donnie, how are you, buddy? And like every 5 minutes, someone was going to come across and give you a hug. I feel like Rocky Air is going to get the king table up the back in a second and just like order everything on the menu and be sitting up there eating.
Or he's already here and we just haven't seen him.
Oh, he's got the private back room. He's got the private back room.
That's true.
Oh, Mr. Rocky, Mr. Rocky, come on this way.
Exactly. Oh, yes.
Mr. Rocky, come this way, come this way. So let me introduce Donnie Ronen, who is a really old friend of mine. I am really stoked that with this podcast, I get to hang out with friends. And actually, 9 times out of 10, I get to ask questions and find out stuff that we normally wouldn't talk about because that would be rude to ask. But you want to introduce yourself? The hard-hitting questions.
By the way, did you see that nightstick that dude just walked in with?
No.
It was unequivocally, it was a
full
beating
billy club?
tool. Beyond. I'll just let you check
Just
it out.
on his belt?
Yeah, just hanging on the belt. Yeah. Anyway, what was the
carry?
question? Yeah, open carry law. Yeah. Was there a question?
Introduce yourself.
Oh, hello. Hello.
You don't need to lean in.
I know. Hello, audience, pre-shipped audience. I'm Donnie Ronen, and I have a very, very simple life. I live in Oakland. My office is in Las Vegas, and my bar and my business partner are in Austin. So it's very straightforward.
Yeah, pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
And so, what's your bar?
Academia in Austin, in downtown Austin, in the warehouse district on 4th Street, between Colorado and Lavaca. Come by anytime. We're happy to have you.
So, it could be a la Jerry Seinfeld, comedians getting coffee in cars.
It's all part of the experience.
It's all part of the experience.
Yes.
So I was joking last week on social media about finding out exactly what you do, because I've actually wanted this question too, and I've never really we talk about what you do and your travels and that sort of thing, but I've really never knocked down to what you actually do. I know you work with the family with training and that sort of thing, which was a big part of your career for a long time. And we'll get to Baiju. We'll get to Baiju in a bit. We'll get to Baiju in a bit because I find it very interesting that a Jewish guy from Oakland is the spokesperson for Baiju.
Oh, not spokesperson. And it's Haiju.
Haiju. Well, you kind of are. Let's be honest. We're going to get to that. For all the kids out there who follow you on Facebook and FOMO a ton, what do you actually do?
Awesome. I like that you guys can't see the face that came along with that question. So what is it that it's a bit of intrigue and a bit of confusion?
Well, I get it all the time. It's like, so what do you actually do? And I'm like, I try and explain what I do, but then people assume that I'm 5 people. And I believe that Ann Tunneman from Tales believed that I was like 3 different people for a really long time because I had Chilled Magazine at 2010, 2011. Plus I was speaking, plus I was bartending and stuff like that. I talk to people and they'd have different tones when they talk to me via email and then realize that I'm the exact same person. Because you're like me, you're a bit of a workaholic. And so it's one of those things that I sort of like, people assume that you're multiple people because there's no way in the world that possibly one person could do all the things that you're talking about. Oh yeah, I'll sponsor this event through the magazine. Oh yeah, I'll give you muddlers. Yeah, I'll come down and speak and bartend at special events. Yeah. So I think the thing is always people, like some people have like very boxed in ideas of what a job is, but then when you really start like breaking it down, like I talk about the podcast, and people are like, oh, you do a podcast as well as school, as well as X, as well as Y, as well as Z.
Yeah. They're like, when do you sleep?
Yeah.
Right.
6 hours a night.
Well, that was the funny thing when you were talking about when I mentioned the travel thing earlier, like this is here, this is here, this is here. I feel like the second part of that was almost, I feel like it's very easy to explain to people here at SACC, because a lot of people have these sort of like multiple roles. To other people, they look at me like I'm a complete insane person.
Well, I didn't know your office was in Vegas. I assumed your office was always in Oakland.
I do almost, I mean, it's my birth state, and it's, a place that I love, but I do little to no actual work there.
Okay.
So, when I'm home,
Which is how often?
I'd like it to be more often this year, but, as I sort of think that to myself between sort of end of December and now, there have been so many things that have come up.
Yeah.
That we know that are happening for the next 2 years. It's been busy. It's been a busy couple of weeks. But so to answer the question, for the past 6.5 years, I worked with Kathy Casey in Liquid Kitchen, and did predominantly my role there was working at Fairmont, which I really loved. It was great, and in fact, I just saw, I still see a lot of those people, and enjoy them a tremendous amount. And luckily, they look at me and they're like, "Oh, that's the guy that came in, and like now we make double what we used to make."
Yeah, people
like,
still
nice.
at Fairmont Empress, people still rave about you.
No, thank you. Wow, I haven't been there for a while,
Wow.
so thank you. That's
Like
great.
the old guys, really old guys.
Which, by the way, to me, at a place like that, at a union property like that the old guys still do, is like the biggest compliment I could take. Because those are usually the guys that, like, anyone that comes in, especially third party, comes in as a consultant, they give you the biggest middle finger they can.
And then another place that raved about you was Fairmont, Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, I was there for World Class, and I sent you a picture because I was sitting at the bar. Was it the
Nacarat?
bar? Yeah, Nacarat there, and the Negroni Ronen or whatever it's called,
The Negronin.
the Negronin, and I had to have one of those. And I try and stay incognito at the bars, like especially for like World Class and stuff. I just wanted to go in and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh yeah," like, and then they start raving about you. I'm like, "Yeah, I know the guy. It's fine. Like, you don't need don't need to tell me how massively awesome that he is."
Thank you. Well, that's funny that you think that you can go anywhere and be incognito. So, yeah. You're like 6'11".
I try and put an American accent on, and no one recognizes me.
Right. You should probably use our photo from last night as your for this podcast.
It's gonna be my business card.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Your face isn't even on it, but it's fine. So yeah, to the audience, like the frame of the photo ran out of space for Shawn.
And they wanted me to duck down, and I'm like, I refuse to duck down.
No ducking.
I'm Shawn motherfucking Soole. I don't duck.
Yes, this is the guy that likes to go incognito.
Yep.
No. So that was the majority of. The funny thing is, like, it was this thing that, like, I was really passionate about and would put a lot of time and effort into, but it was still only about half of what I did. So I still, like, I've been doing national accounts for years, like putting together programs for national accounts, which I love doing. It's a ton of fun to be able to put effort into something locally is great, and then also to put effort into something that, like, all of a sudden, a place that has 600 units across North America, like, a little thing can affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was always great for me to walk into what I consider to be kind of a chain place and see things on a menu that I know someone I know is responsible for. There was a Yardbird, not Yardbird. Yardbird? Is that the name of it? It's Yard House, yeah. Yeah. I walked in there one time. Actually, Kathy and I were together in the suburbs of Boston, and it was a cocktail with X-Rated and Dama Gay Vita. And I'm like, I know the person who did that. It was really fun. And I always think of that when I'm just like, wow, they're going to do this one kind of crazy cocktail that I came up with, because you sort of balance things like between suppliers sometimes, based on whoever the client is. And if it's something that's relevant, it fits that particular operator, it's going to be successful. And it's so fun. Like, it's kind of like a baby steps thing where, like, I know that I can push you guys to try new things, but it has to be within, like, the parameters of, like, they're working with, like, a bunch of different suppliers, or
different states and different provinces if you're in Canada.
And everyone has a different agenda, so,
I think always the thing to pay off for that is, like, when you walk into a place like that and you've had the cocktails at another venue, the same a different franchise, and you walk in, the cocktail's the same, the cocktail's the same, and the cocktail's the same, or you've had that from the actual creator, and you're like, oh, so it shows a testament to training. When you sit
that the
down
consistency
and
is
the consistency's
there.
there.
Yeah.
And I always say that cocktail culture isn't built out of creativity; it's built out of consistency. And I'm sure you find this with a lot of younger kids these days. Creativity, and it's what the market wants. The changes all the time, like the constant evolution. But I try and like beat into people that if you want to build a cocktail culture in your town or in your venue, it has to be consistency. Every bartender.
Well,
makes
that's
it
why
the
your
same every
turnover is
single
high.
time.
It's all the beating. Yeah.
Hey,
Like, guys, I'm just trying to beat this into you.
fear or respect? I'll take either or.
Just be quiet and stay still. I understand. It's fine.
I use a phone book so there's no bruises.
Would you like some more salsa?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Salsa?
Yeah.
I think these are my tortillas because you didn't ask for tortillas.
They are your tortillas.
So continue with what you do.
Oh yeah. I mean, just like you were talking about before, it's like this crazy long list. And so my business partner Russell Davis and I, he was the one. We've been working together for years, and that was one of the other things like that I also did at the same time, working with Fairmont and with Kathy. And we just always do these kind of like crazy kind of cowboy projects, just because that's the kind of stuff that we love doing, and it's the kind of energy that we both like. And it's real easy to work together. And a lot of people that know both of us get kind of confused as to how that works out. I'm like, it's actually a really great balance, and it's been very fun. I mean, he's the one that called me up and said like, hey, how'd you like to open a bar in Austin? I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea. Let's do that. And it's been really great. I mean, we just love working together.
Is that how you pick most of your projects?
It's funny because we'll get calls from people that we've known for years.
Yeah.
That we've known for years, and these things will like come back to us, like old relationships or old jobs or whatever, and they'll say like, hey, what are you working on right now? Can you want to collaborate on this thing?
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun, not only for me but also for him, to like the random calls he'll get for us to do projects based on like things that he'd done before or relationship before. They just like, hey, it was great working with you. Let's do something again. It's super fun. So I can talk about like a couple of things that we're working on right now, beyond just the bar. There's a project we're working on in Costa Rica right now, which has a lot of different layers in it.
Jesus.
We're both pushing really hard for some governmental change in the United States as far as the way.
President?
We cannot get into that this morning, but yes. About the way some of the states work.
Okay.
Texas being one.
Yeah.
Texas is not only a control state, but it's also a 4-tier system. Yeah, exactly. And
So
that's
it's
by the way, and that's the Canadian guy being like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. That's even worse than Canada. Would you like to announce your presidency run for 2020?
No, absolutely
on the podcast?
No, there's way too many photos out there.
You could get the popular vote though. Oh Jesus! Hey buddy, we're just recording a podcast. We were just talking about you at the start of it.
Oh shit! Yeah. You're like, I'm surprised Rocky's not here.
That really could not have been better if we had planned it.
Oh, that was hilarious. So listeners, Rocky just turned up.
Well, the funny thing is that he and I were on a radio show together with Souther. What was that, like end of summer?
Yeah.
Early fall or something? And Souther asked the same question. He's like, so what do you do for a living?
I was getting to the bottom of what Donnie does.
Sorry, excuse me.
I'm gonna cut that bit out.
Sorry, I've always told people that Donnie works for the Mossad.
Right.
Donnie what?
Works for the Mossad.
Oh, Jesus.
Funny, not funny story. A friend of mine years ago started, this was like 1998, started a job in San Francisco and worked with a really old friend of mine's mom. So my friend who's the son was joking with his mom one time, and she said, "What does Donnie do again?" And he's like, "Oh, he's a drug dealer." So he was joking, but she'd known him for 20-something years as her son at that point, and still hadn't figured out the balance of comedy versus not comedy. she started like talking to people in the office about it. So it comes back to it comes back to me through my friend Victoria, who's the one that worked in that office, and she's like, "Do you know that there's people out there that like think that you're a drug dealer?" I'm like, "This is so terrific." I mean, I know it didn't take long to figure out. I was like, "Where did you hear that?" She's like, "At the office," and I like picked up the phone. I'm like, "Dude, you can't do things like that. That's not cool." And I'm like, not even as a joke, because come on, it's a small universe.
So trying to figure out what you do. So how'd you get into the Baiju thing?
Oh, so thank you. The Baiju thing is actually
Let me know when you're ready.
thank you. We're working with the San Francisco World Spirits Competition.
Okay.
Really love those guys. I think they've worked very hard to try and be so strict about what the competition is all about, and they've really turned around, I think, how people feel about a lot of those competitions, because now there's like so many of them.
Yeah.
It's basically
There's
like them and IWSC are
And
the
how
two
many
like
and
big
how many
ones.
judges are for that one these days? They got a lot, don't they?
Like 60.
Yeah. So like you really start averaging off your scores with 60 people. It's not.
Well, no, because there are certain panels, and they put certain people on
And
panels
it's,
that where
and it's
they're
not one person tasting whiskey and writing a book about it.
Though,
no. That's just Morgan Taylor. Like he'll write a book about anything.
I mean, given the broad body of work, like Baijiu and Maotai, I'm just like, wow, whoever gets that panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
Really.
Yeah.
On purpose? Like when it first happened, was it planned?
It wasn't the first year they had done
Or was it more
before.
like they picked all the panels and then they put everybody's name in a hat? It was like, okay, so
Who needs to be punished?
who has pissed me
actually,
off this year?
we tasted some really interesting stuff, and that's the whole thing. So, like, for example, to answer another question of, what is it that you do? So I put together this program about Genever in the United States. So it's a 3-year trade-focused education program that is category-based, has brands attached to it, but it's a multitude of brands over multiple
which is
distilleries.
genius.
Yeah, which, by the way, is very late. I mean, Bowles did their launch of their classic back in 2008. It's
Yeah.
been over a decade.
Jesus, has it been that long?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But again, the thing is like I remember. I think we're all old enough that I remember when gin started becoming popular. I remember
yeah. People are like, oh no, that's my grandmother. Drink.
and always the angle was from like Simon Ford and stuff was teaching people about gin 1st and then talk about their particular brand. So it makes sense because especially for Geneva, especially like teach people about what Geneva is and the malt wine and the contents and all this sort of stuff, and then speak about the brands that do it really well.
So there are a couple of different obstacles that anything quote unquote new, which is the joke because Baiju's even older than your neighbor, but people aren't accustomed to the sort of like funky malt thing. Like you talk about Genever and like people probably don't know, B think that it's like a different kind of gin. There's so many
Well,
like
they picked up a bottle during duty free going through Schiphol one time and then tasted it and tastes like vodka.
right or
Sure.
exactly
Yeah.
or they got like a young, or they got a flavored or something, of
Yep.
which there are a ton, and a lot of that stuff is consumed in the Netherlands. A lot of like the young Genever and the thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, anything else for you?
No, we're just cruising along right now. Thank you.
Thank you. They'll do they drink a lot of young and a lot
Yeah.
of flavored, which was really interesting for me to learn. But there's so many different layers there, and then not only are you bringing it to a group of people who are like, oh yeah, no, I know, and then you give them a taste of like 2 other ones that are different styles, and they're like, just kidding, I didn't know anything about this category.
Yeah.
And that was kind of something like I like those discoveries as well, where I get to taste something, I'm like, oh, this is going to be really fun to talk to people about, because like I personally thought I had an idea and I really didn't, because my view of it was just such a
Minutia.
tiny little
Yeah.
slice. So on one hand, people were like, oh, do you think Bowls would be concerned they sort of like had this market to themselves? And I was like,
If they
they
are,
I was like,
they're
they
missing the
should.
point.
Yeah, they shouldn't. When they're and they
And historically, never did.
yeah, and they're part of this group anyway, which is great that they're the big guys. They're like, you know what, this needs to be a level playing field, and it's only to their advantage, because what happens is people who have actually had it on their shelves for a decade and forgot about it 8 years ago, are now getting back into the entire category, and they're realizing that like that classic recipe is right in the middle of the range.
Yeah.
So you have your like super young and some of the stuff that's coming from Belgium, and then you have stuff that's 100% malt spirit and has been, you know, multi layers of age. I mean, like 17 year, like people don't think about the category like that at all.
Of aged,
Right.
aged in a year.
And that's what's so great about it is like you put it in front of seasoned bartenders and this is very cool. Like I had no idea. They start thinking of drink recipes and like how they can plug it in. Oh, you're right. It is more like whiskey than it is gin. Baijiu is almost exactly the same. It's 1,000 years old. It's twice the history of Geneva that still nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, hey, this new spirit that's hitting town, right? And it's already been around for 500 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baijiu is so if Mutai is the first thing that they've tasted, which is no joke, it's called like saucy style. People will hate you.
Yes.
Especially consumers who are not interested in. That's not true because like I kept talking to the Baijiu people about mezcal as a story.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're still struggling with it now, and in fact, quite frankly, I want people to struggle with it because like this can't turn into a mass-produced product. No. It's like Baijiu, go for it.
Yeah.
Because like we can make as much of that as we want.
Yeah.
It's like a blend of grains, mostly sorghum, and as long as you have the space for it and you have enough little clay jars to rest it,
Yeah.
you can make as much as you want. And you walk into some of the larger distilleries, and they have a range of stuff that even that distillery alone, stuff is so different, like, vastly different, and you can't see the end of the building.
Did I see a map on Facebook, on your Facebook or someone else's Facebook, where they were talking about Baijiu and like Saucy is like southeast, then you've got rice forward, and you've got citrusy, and depending on the region, depends on the sort of style.
The only map that you saw on my Facebook was me actually experimenting with, hey, I'm going here. Rocky loves to do this all the time.
Yeah.
You actually just did this yesterday. I don't do it very often, and I was just talking with Kukuru about it, and I'm like, hey, dude, I'm going to do the map thing. I'm going to post the thing so people like actually know where I'm going. They don't find out about it afterwards. And I think he even responded to me. He was like, feels good, doesn't it? Yeah. But no, I had no map on my thing. But
Someone
yes,
posted them out. I'm going to try and track it down for
Yeah,
you.
no, it's honestly, it's like, look, I'm gonna be here, and it helps. It's very helpful.
sometimes it works out.
Yeah, but man,
One of the other few times I did it was I was visiting friends in Dakar, in Senegal, where we actually did the first ever Negroni week in Senegal. What's really interesting about Senegal is it's a predominantly Muslim country, but there has been, especially in comparison to the rest of the region, very little issue. Everybody sort of lives harmoniously, you know, and certainly not because of the French, and certainly not because of slavery. Like,
Right.
I mean, that was the western portal of Africa where people were shipped out. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the things you go to as like a tourist visiting there. That's crazy, but there's something about like walking in the market there where they're predominantly speaking Wolof, and if you came from like a sort of south central part of the country, and then they're maybe speaking Pular, I was with a friend. I was just really wanting to go to the market with my friend Ronen, who is about yay high and blonde hair, blue eyes, and speaks Pular. So I was just like, I have to see this for my own eyes. Like, let's go to the fabric market together. So because they all sort of like rush over and they want to talk to her in Pular. It was great. But that was one of the reasons why like I really wanted to visit while they were still living there. It's a totally different experience to be able to visit a country like that with friends who are there and know it well. She
Yeah.
did Peace Corps there, 15 years before, 16 years.
How old's the market?
Older than you and me. And we're pretty old. I don't know.
Must be old.
Yeah. We'll look it up on we'll edit this later.
Yeah, that's good.
With a really, really confident answer.
There's going to be so much fucking post-production on this one.
Yeah. Totally.
So much post-production.
But coming back from that trip, actually posted something about being in Paris because I had one day and one night in Paris on the way back. And Goldman,
right.
like someone a friend of mine from home that Rocky works with at Ferrand was there at the same time, and we ended up like meeting up. But Dave Minton was in London and decided, you know what, I'm here for this thing. I have an extra day night. Let's just do it. And like decided to
And Minnie just flew down to Paris?
Well, he was in London. It's not that far. He goes, you know, hunting in the Yukon. Who knows? Whatever. From, you know, London to Paris. Is
I'm
not
saying
that
he's got a really good Photoshop person.
he maybe does. Maybe does. And the beard always looks trim.
The beard is always
Yeah,
trim.
very handsome man. Anyway, so he posted something about the algorithm just knew, like
Yeah.
Facebook like knew it, like showed something about him going there was the first thing as soon as like I opened the phone.
Yeah.
And that's with I just went to the thing to look something up that a friend of mine had told me, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think the information was he sent me via Messenger, and I look it up, and boom, Dave Mitten's like right at the top there, and I was like, oh, you're on the way here. I texted him, and he's like, awesome, and we literally spent the whole. He had another friend from Van who was coming in.
Sweet.
It was great. So we like they basically like came onto
So
my.
what you're really
plan.
saying is that everybody should post where they are on Facebook at all times.
No, that's a terrible idea. But
I mean,
it was,
because sometimes
it's
it
pretty
backfires
fun.
terribly.
Yeah.
A quiet night in Paris turns into debauchery.
Yeah, no, well, actually, so I was in Dublin
This one night.
3
in
weeks
Bangkok?
ago.
Yeah.
I was in Dublin 3 weeks ago, and I was planning on a relatively tame night. I met up with Drew Record from San Francisco. We're just gonna go to a pub and have dinner and a couple drinks, and then Tim Hurley found us.
Oh. And then it just went downhill from
Just
there.
went, I mean, you know, as only Tim can make it.
I think it's only a Hurley he can make
Yes.
happen. And it could be anyone that he's related to.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Yeah.
But that's funny. Oh, by the way, so Rocky just threw casually into the sentence. So when I was in Dublin a couple weeks ago, this is the kind of idiotic stuff that we're dealing with. Right?
So
but
much
it makes
post.
me feel so much better.
So much post.
Oh no, that's part of the story. That's part of the story. And again, we've already shared airtime, so this is easy.
This is perfect.
Yeah.
So let's get back to Baiju.
Yeah.
So we completely went on a tangent, as these things usually
Yeah.
do. You went to a conference.
Yeah, the first one I went to as a representative of the competition, as someone who was on that panel, and was trying to learn more, coming to them as a not consumer,
Yeah.
as trade, but as someone who's like fascinated about this and wants to learn more, and realizes that like a lot of people find this to be very funky. And when I was
Yeah.
looking up articles on Baiju as part of my research for my presentation, like so much crazy stuff came up. You'd look up Baiju, just in general, and the articles would be called like, you have to try the new thing that's making Westerners puke. Like, no joke, like that was one of the things. And I changed it as part of my presentation where I included articles that I found.
Yeah.
Like, you have to understand this is the perception. I changed puke to sick.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's getting translated
Yeah.
on the fly.
Yeah.
And so if I say vomit or puke, it's gonna get.
It's
who knows how it's
and then
gonna get.
it's going to get translated, and everybody's going to be like,
Yeah, exactly. Oh no. That would require the audience to have any kind of reaction whatsoever.
oh, it was a...
Very dead.
Can read the audience very well?
No.
Or there was no audience to read?
No, it was packed. There's just no reaction to anything. I don't know. It's a standard thing for. This was a tech conference, right? So this was distillers and fermenters. It was the Chinese distilled spirits technical conference. So we were talking a lot about equipment. We were talking a lot about distillation. It was super interesting to get into conversations, and I had a lot of people come up afterwards to ask questions, which was great.
Yeah.
But none of them would ask questions during the thing, because then it would have to go in front of 500 people with a translator.
And you do an hour and a half seminar at the very end. They're just like, yes. That's
You
pretty
could-
much
exactly, just like
At the
old
very
kung
end,
fu
yep,
movies,
yes.
where exactly they talk for 5 minutes and then
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So where do you see Baiju in the next 3 to 5 years?
If they do something like what Unilever is doing now, as in they because they've already tried. I mean, how many times has a brand come to Tails or tried to do some kind of pitch? They're just going to keep throwing money into a hole.
Yeah.
Because right now it's 1/10% is exported out of China, and it's still the number one distilled spirit in the world. So
You see how
soju is still beats it.
Yeah.
But most of the soju that goes out is fermented and not a distilled spirit.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that it's the number one spirit in the world, even if it were in the top 5, and that only 1/10%. is
Yeah.
being exported. Not coming to the United States, exported out of China.
In general.
It's nuts. So they see obviously like a huge potential outside of China, but they're like, how do we get people to? And I'm like, how do you get people to like it? You get them by starting to understand it. Exactly what you were saying before with like Simon and Jen, right? You get
So
people
that's
to
be like a Baiju
get-
council. Baiju council that pools their resources, hits everything as a whole.
Yeah.
And sees like what the saying, all a rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah.
Sort of feel to it.
Two things that I can predict about the council: A, Rocky will be on it, and B, he'll wear a cape. I don't know. I just see a cape. I don't know.
I see like royal blue. I just feel Baiju has that royal blue sort of feel to it.
No, I mean if we do something in China, it's actually going to be made from a bunch of crushed velvet Crown Royal bags. So it's going to be like
yeah.
regal purple,
Yeah.
and they'll respond well too because they love Crown Royal.
Yeah, this is true.
Not as much as here in Texas, but
So we're going to tie this off because we're at game close to time, but I see like big swaths of this game cut out for noise. But best cocktail city in the US.
interesting.
I'm going to do 5 like hard hitting questions.
That's tough. Like for drinking cocktails, for things that are interesting.
The place that you look forward to the most traveling and experiencing food and drink culture in.
So that's still tough because there are divisions. I'm not trying to complicate the answer or avoid
Well, you
it.
complicated the answer when I asked you what to do. So
we barely. It's like we hit like 20%. Okay. Honestly, San Francisco and Oakland and the Bay Area still blow me away when it comes to. I mean, we're very biased.
Yeah.
But when it comes to.
I was like, oh, am I late? Oh, no, you probably just sat down with y'all. Hi.
Hi. Good morning.
Sean, nice to meet you.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
Sorry,
We-
we're caught.
Could
oh,
enjoy
no.
here.
Yeah.
It's still so people are sort of like struggling with the restaurant scenes everywhere right now because especially places like New York, Bay Area, LA, like where things are very expensive. People that are doing very cool things are getting priced out sometimes because the cool things don't have anything to do with how much you spend.
Yeah.
They have to do with like innovation and creativity, and a lot of people who are constantly in sort of creative flux and like always thinking are in areas where there's a lot of creativity happening. And where there are a lot of artists and musicians and people doing weird stuff, that can't happen when a 1-bedroom apartment
Yeah.
is $3,200.
And creativity doesn't always translate out to dollar cents.
Right, but I'm still pretty blown away by innovation in San Francisco cocktails.
Yeah.
There are other cities that are amazing because of like their energy and their simplicity. Miami is one of those.
Yeah.
You can get like a 17-layer drink and it'll come to you like a shot in a beer. Like
Yeah.
it'll come to you in that like very simple, nice way where somebody hands you something, you're not overwhelmed, and it's fun.
Yeah.
You know. And I still think Boston is a totally underrated. I still think Boston is one of the most underrated cocktail cities.
The next trend in bartending. I hate to talk about trends because I really don't like trends.
No,
at
no,
all.
I understand.
Like I hate the whole like this is the trends for 2019, and you're like, well,
This is a topic that we talk about it in generalities very often because it's like it's a generational thing. It's almost like trend counter trend all the time.
Yeah.
So both on the East Coast and the West Coast, there were a handful of really great bartenders who were doing amazing things. But you'd have to know when they were on shift
Yeah.
in order to get a good drink.
I hate that.
That was sort of standard. But then these fun places started popping up. Milk and Honey,
Yeah.
Bourbon and Branch. And the style was the counter trend to the trend that everything was kind of crappy unless you knew where to go and when.
Yeah.
Right? So the counter trend to that was like, hey, we're going to create these like fun speakeasies where everybody is, a cocktail encyclopedia, right? But then you go in and be like, oh, there are rules, and one of those rules is be quiet and don't have fun.
Yeah.
So then, in fact, the same now big bar group that started Bourbon and Branch, called Future Bars, opened another place called Rick House.
Yeah.
Which was their answer to the existing problem of not everybody wants speakeasy, not everybody wants quiet, not everybody wants like being told to not order a Cosmopolitan, right? So they opened a place that was like super fun, high energy, still had a crazy menu that Castro did.
Yeah.
And they were, and in fact, my partner Russell was like part of that team when they became the first time a category for high volume cocktail
Yeah.
because that was their counter trend to the counter trend.
Yeah.
So it keeps sort of flipping back and forth. I feel like right now we're in that place where I was talking about before with, like, say, San Francisco, Miami, where you can do elevated cocktails
In a super chilled
in a
level.
very chill, very easily executable way.
Yeah.
You have companies like Bar Draft here in Dallas who are doing a great job with that, where they want to do something fun and layered. But if they're working with a large national account, how do they get back to that consistency piece? Right? And doing draft cocktails, as long as they do them well and they train really hard on how the functionality of that works, those things they're gonna succeed.
Yeah.
And the people's misnomers about how that works have already changed 10 times over. That happened at Fairmont multiple times, where the person who was in charge of the GM or the F&B director are like, no, because we don't want to do that because cocktails on tap are poor quality and everyone thinks that way. Like,
I have 2 cocktails on tap of Pags. Pags is like the epitome of what you're talking about. Because like I have a milk punch on the menu of Pags, and it's all about quick, like high prep items, like stuff that takes time to prep, but quick service. We do like 650 people on a Friday.
Right.
11 to 11.
And you are a privately owned small neighborhood restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a place that will sell, 11,000 of one drink. In a 6-month period.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about cocktails on tap, and I think, again, they go back to like, it's cheap. It's always cheap. It doesn't come out the way it should, so on and so forth. And like, but you consistently all the time, and it's quick. Like you're getting slammed on a Friday night, cocktail on tap.
Well, I mean, great example of that. There was a guy who was totally against it. And as soon as he changed roles, we popped that thing in.
Yep.
And this was a place that already did insane volume.
Yep.
And they doubled in volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a second cocktail that like wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be, but the not successful as we wanted it to be, like only sold 6,000.
Yeah.
Like
For sure.
crazy stuff.
So you're talking about the plans you had for 2018. You want to be at home a bit more, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. What's your plans for 2019?
So one of the things we have this Costa Rica project, and that's basically through springtime.
Yeah.
It's an opening May 9th.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of work that we don't do anything half-assed.
No.
So the plus is that we always get the call back. It's the projects are always really exciting. They're always very happy, which is what it's all about, But at the same time, there's no cookie cutter. There's no what you can bring some of your experience and maybe some systems in place to put into place somewhere else so you don't have to do all the work over again. But every place is different.
Yeah.
And every client is different. And in order to make sure that it's the best fit, it ends up being a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we just have to make sure that we're a little more focused.
Yeah. So that's the first part of the year. What's the second part of the year?
I mean, this Enabler project is a 3-year project, and,
Wow.
and I'm dipping sort of in and out of that, just based on now that the category ambassadors around the country are loose,
Later, when you got the systems in place.
it's a very different.
It's a rollout.
It's a very different thing. But at the same time, when you help put something like that together, I didn't just do it because it certainly wasn't for the money. It was because of the fact that it's a really interesting project, and you just bringing up Baiju is a model of how things could potentially be done.
Oh, I think I saw the rollout and the activation at Portland Cocktail Week, and I think that model can be applied to a ton of different categories in the world that don't get the love that they probably should.
Yeah, and a lesson to all of those categories is that they need to learn to work together.
Yeah.
So like. There's a group of Pisco producers that always do events together.
Oh yeah,
and still not enough. I wish they did more, because there's an energy in that room that's very different than you got a bunch of South Americans together. It's a very
I think I was there for they did an activation at BCB a couple of years ago. The Peruvian Pisco, and it was a massive stand, and it was just something like 25 different Piscos on the stand.
Yeah, most of
Berlin.
which people don't know and don't see on a regular
Yeah.
basis. Yeah, it's very cool. So that's going to be something. And again, like I really want Baiju to not rush back into the market again for like the fourth time at this point, and do something very smart
And structure it and do it
yeah,
properly.
my hope is that they'll allow us to help them in a way that will work.
Yeah, I can see the cultural differences between the US and China being interesting to sort of deal with as well in the way of like doing business and stuff.
Yeah, and that was actually part of my first presentation on my first visit. Was actually about being more transparent.
Yeah.
So like you can always go on the tour and they'll show you how it's made, and they're not really like secretive about
Yeah.
that. There's certain questions you ask as like a kind of like a booze nerd
Yeah.
that they're sort of surprised by.
Yeah.
You can tell they're taken aback a little bit, but you talk to anybody that understands why you're there, they're happy to answer. They're
Yeah.
not secretive about that. But between like the information firewall and the way that people do business differently,
Yeah.
there is a moat there.
Yeah.
There is a virtual and physical moat called the Pacific Ocean that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that really keeps people outside of the inner circle of what Baiju's doing. And they're not working together yet.
Yeah.
So like I was in Sichuan, China, and like in the heart of Sichuan in Yibin for another conference, and was talking a lot with one distillery or one producer that was my host there.
Yeah.
I'm like, while I'm here, I want to see a completely different style of production. They get really offended about that. It's
Yeah.
like people talk about that with Iowa all the time.
Yeah.
They're like, everyone's friends off the island.
Yeah.
Like, but you go there, you better have the plans already set.
Yeah.
Because you don't go to one thing that's owned by Diageo and say that you're
yeah.
going to go, oh yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
I think we should probably tie this up because it's getting really loud in here.
Yeah.
Really, really loud. I think it's going to still be good, but I've got a lot of post-production on this one,
Yeah.
probably the most I've done so far.
We can do it again.
We can do it again.
Yeah.
We can probably. And Rocky would probably still find us and interrupt us
Probably
for
pop
sure.
in.
Piece of advice for a bartender getting in the industry. Last thing.
Zero ego. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Like I feel it was part of my bio for a while.
Yeah.
Like that, my life is ridiculous, and I can only thank the people that helped me get there. Like, and not just leaders and mentors, but also colleagues, like people who are at the same level.
Yeah.
But if we're not constantly learning, then there's really no point in existing, right? You always have to be around people that you are constantly learning from, and I'm very thankful and very appreciative of how things have gotten me to different places, and some of those are super wacky. Some of them are amazing. Some of them are difficult, but you learn through all those stages. So I don't mean don't come into a room with confidence.
Yeah.
Like you need to function in the world. You need to have confidence, but there's a lot of unnecessary ego. It gets people into trouble. When people are collaborative and nice people, everything works out.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, let's try that. That's perfect. Hey, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
It was fun.
Yeah.
We'll see how much noise there is on this thing.
Find out.